Today, I'm going to ask Jace Truebel. He's the Director of Brand Insights and Strategy at Gallo, and he's going to be talking about bridge the gap between brand performance and performance marketing.
Thanks, Will.
Sure.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you all hear me? This is so weird. I don't know how to do this. This is gonna be. It reminds me of like the silent rays. Has anybody ever been to those? Yeah, this is super weird. I can't even hear myself speak. This is gonna be bumpy, y'all. So just strap up. We're gonna try this. As Will mentioned, my name is Jace Truebel. First of all, I just want to thank you guys for your time and attention today. This is a topic that I'm passionate about, that I really like talking about. And I'd like to offer you guys some challenges here as we start to think about marketing philosophy and marketing problems and solving them as consumer insights and market research professionals. As Will said, my name is Jace Truebel, and I am the Director of Consumer Insights for Gallo. Many of you guys may not know who Gallo is. Gallo has just recently rebranded from E&J Gallo Winery. We are the largest winery in the world, and you may not know our name, but you certainly will know many of the brands that we have. We own and market some of the most prolific and iconic and consumer-loved brands in the alcohol space. On our wine side of the business, we have brands like Barefoot and La Marca and Apothic, and in our luxury wine BU, we have Orin Swift. And then on our spirit side, we own High Noon, and we also own mainstream kind of spirits brands like New Amsterdam Vodka, New Amsterdam Gin, and Camarena Tequila. So we have a lot of different brands. We have about 150, just over 150 brands across our spirits and wine portfolio. There's a ton of them, and it makes for a really interesting conversation, especially when you start thinking about marketing philosophy and performance marketing against brand building. I want to start our conversation off. I'll be honest with you. I'm a little kind of shoot from the hip kind of a guy, so I want to be a little bit transparent with you on how I try to prepare this speech, so you guys can hold me accountable at the end of this. We've all been to a lot of conferences. We've all been to a lot of speeches like this. We've all been to a lot of talks. Not at IIEX, but certainly in some conferences, what you can find is people are really good at writing a headline and really good at writing a hook. And then for 30 or 45 minutes, you're going to sit here and they're going to tell you all about the problem that you already know exists and that you are already kind of bought into. And at the end of the conversation, you feel really validated that that problem is real, but you don't have a whole lot of what to go do about it. You don't have a whole lot of things that are going to change the way that you think and the way that you're going to go and tackle that problem in your company. I tried to really hold myself and my feet to the fire to not fall into that trap here today. So I really want you guys to walk away with learning how my insights team tackled this problem, which you may not think is an insights problem, but I'm going to challenge your thinking on that, and how we ended up going and changing the narrative and progressing the conversation internally around performance marketing and brand building. So I hope that you guys find this interesting. I hope that you guys find that you guys have a different way of thinking about this and how you can use a lot of the tools that are already in your toolkit to start changing this conversation internally. So let's start with, this is so weird. You guys can actually hear me loud and all that stuff? All right. So I want to start with kind of just grounding us in where the conversation started at our company. I think everybody will agree with this statement up here, yes? Marketing landscape today is the hardest it's ever been. It's the most congested. We all hate emails and we all hate messages and marketing that gets thrown to us that we don't ask for, all these things. And yet by the same token, our executives are pushing the marketing function, and I'm going to talk about marketing. I know we're all market researchers here. I'm a career researcher myself. They're talking about marketing as needing to drive an ROI or prove its contribution to the revenue gains and value creation for our companies. And so we have this really interesting space that it's the hardest it's ever been. We still struggle with metrics and measurement, and yet we're getting pushed even harder on these things. I want to talk about where that conversation started in our company. Is we had our executives come to us and say, look, we are a business that has been built very steadily on distribution and really strong sales force. I want to know and I want to be able to quantify what help and what propelling our marketing efforts are doing with that. And it really ended up getting put into two buckets. It ended up getting put into what are the things that we can measure and what are the things that we can't. And those two buckets loosely started to form and are the basis for the industry talking about performance marketing and brand building. I just want to level set for a second. This is not meant to be naive or anything like that. I know you all know what these definitions are, but given the fact that there's a lot of nuance around these definitions, I really want to talk a little bit about the simplicity. We're going to be talking about it for the sake of our conversation. Performance marketing is really where our company started talking about all of the metrics that we could actually measure with a lot of degree of confidence, and that added short-term measurable results to the brand. Things like conversion rate, things like click-through rate, things like email open rates. ROI is in there if you want to spend the $300,000 on MMMs and marketing mix. All of those things are in there in terms of hard measures that drive what impact of short-term efforts had on a brand. But there's this other side that we all know as marketers and as market researchers, that creating a brand identity and an emotional connection to consumers is what actually drives short and long-term brand love, as well as what drives loyalty going forward. How many people know how to measure that? You and I, drinks tonight. Great, because I need that. It's really hard. You're right. There are some times, and I've got some thoughts for you here too. It's really hard. There are ways to do it, and there's assumptions that are made in that you align on as an organization that you're comfortable with. But it's really, really hard to measure that, and certainly not to the degree that you can measure a click-through rate. Patagonia is a great example. If I were to ask 100 people at this conference what Patagonia stands for as a brand, 99 of them would probably say around about the same thing: environmental sustainability, environmental consciousness going forward, all of those things. But Patagonia also sends you promo emails if you've bought a product from them before, saying here's a promotion, you guys should buy another product. So that's Patagonia leveraging brand identity and brand building as well as performance marketing. Okay? So when we started talking about this as an organization, we started saying, well, or we started getting asked, okay, so what's the mix? What is the mix here of between performance marketing tactics in our campaign and brand building tactics in our campaign? How many people have heard that question from their organization? Wonderful. Okay. What's the answer that you guys got? Yeah, now you get to talk and not hear yourself. Go ahead. Yeah. What's the answer that you guys usually get? The answer is we need both, right? Yeah, no, we need both. Okay. Well, here's my answer to that. Cool. Thanks. I agree with you, but I still don't know what to go and do with all of this. I don't know how to go and action on that, because yes, I agree we need both, but I still need to think about dollars and cents. I need to think about X's and O's, and block and tackling, whatever corporate jargon you want to use. Well, I don't have the answer for you today. And the reality is there isn't one answer. I think all of us know kind of deep down there isn't one answer of what the right mix is going to be. But here's my offer to you. We are talking about, and I'm actually surprised as many of you showed up as you did, so thank you for not making me feel like I'm alone up here. What I was afraid of was that this was a market research conference. We're all market researchers and consumer insights professionals, and this is a marketing philosophy problem. But what I want to challenge you all to think about today is that a marketing problem is a what? It's a consumer problem. What do? We solve consumer problems, and we bring them to light. So this marketing philosophy problem was actually a consumer insights problem. And we were seeing a lot of potential swirl in our company around talking about this X's and O's. What is the mix? Is it 60, 40, 70, 30? It was agitating to try and come to this number across 150 brands. So we took a step back and we said, what were the questions that were driving this swirl when we think about how to go and solve this problem where it's not an actual number? These are real questions. I've made them a little bit more punchy so that you guys are entertained a little bit. They're not quite said like this in our company. But these are 3 questions that have some Venn diagram across each other that really started to drive and perk the ears and the eyes of our insights team up to say, this is something we got to go tackle. The first was, we have 150 plus brands, and we actually thought that over time we did not do a good job of evolving those brands to actually stand for things that drove purchase in the category. So when you think about sustainability, when you think about standing for ageism, when you think about standing for these cultural moments, we thought we had not evolved our brands enough to be relevant in today's time. Number 2, as a result of that, we weren't talking to the right people, nor were we delivering the right message. And number 3 was a really big one. We actually questioned if brand equity had a role in the wine category. I'm going to talk about wine from here on out. I don't think I actually explicitly said that, but I'm going to talk about wine. We actually started to challenge our own assumptions about what role does brand equity play in the wine category going forward. Because here, you can do this experiment in your head. What were the last 5 clothing brands that you purchased from in your life? You could probably name 3, maybe all 5 for some of you. What were the last 5 wine brands that you consumed? I'll bet you out of 10 of you, only 1 or 2 of you can complete that question. Well, you're a rock star, that's why. Only a few people can complete that question. You can tell me what varietal maybe, you can tell me red, white, you can tell me where. Brand's really hard. So there's this question of, does brand actually play a role in a category that's fragmented, that has a high education barrier to get into, and that in the wine aisle in the grocery store, let's be real, looks kind of all the same, right? So this was a huge, huge step for our company, because if you can't challenge your assumptions, you can't ever move forward and evolve. And this was a hard thing to hear. Our executives were hard on this question, and it made a lot of people uncomfortable. But this question was actually the key that started this whole entire thing. So we started with challenging our assumptions. And as I mentioned, our consumer insights team, I have a rock star team. I will put my team up against anybody else's in the industry. I have one of the best teams I've ever worked with in my career of 20 years-ish in insights. And we got in a war room and we figured out how to break this thing down. And we said, if it is a marketing philosophy problem, it's a corporate strategy problem, it's a marketing problem. But all those things are consumer problems, and that's where we play. So we're gonna have to figure out this from a consumer problem perspective. Now I want to challenge you something. Take all of the stuff out of your head around all of the complexity of performance marketing and all of the opinions and assumptions around the interplay between these two things. If you really take those 3 questions we needed to go and answer, and you think about that first one, are our brands relevant to consumers today? What question does that actually relate to? That's a purchase driver question. Anybody done a purchase driver analysis in their career here? Yeah, all of us. That's a pretty simple thing we can go and do. That is where we can leverage our toolkit to start providing different data, different information to drive a different conversation. But we have that third one still in there, that brand equity. Does brand play a role in the wine category? Well, driver's analysis and purchase driver's analysis typically are very functional. You'll have things like price, you'll have things like taste, you'll have things that are very functional. If we wanted to bring the brand equity part into this, we needed to add the emotional side of this. So we put together a significant number of purchase drivers that were both functional and emotional. I'm not going to go through the methodology in super big detail, but I'm a big method nerd. So if you want to talk about this, please come find me. I will be here all day tomorrow. Come find me. I will geek out with you all day long. I'll buy the drinks, and we will have a good time talking about this. But for sake of time, which I have 12 minutes and probably 17 more minutes of slides, I'm gonna breeze through the methodology stuff. But ultimately what we came out with was a driver's analysis that covered a huge number of attributes. We correlated those through statistical analysis, and we came out with 17 factors that drive category purchase for the wine category. I'm going to do something a little bit different most people don't do up here. I'm going to share some results with you. And the reason is because A, please go act on them. We'll raise the category altogether. Wonderful. But number 2 is you have to see these to see how much it drove a different conversation. We're going to look at the top 3 purchase drivers for the wine category, and we're going to try and guess them. Does anybody want to take a guess at what number 3 might be? Sorry? Price? Good. That's a good guess. Flavor? The label. That's another good guess. It wasn't number 3, but it's pretty close. It was trust. So brand I trust. A lot of head nods. That's great. COVID-19 cemented this in everybody's mind. In center store, food and beverage, and certainly for alcohol categories, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, all of the popular brands soared, all the niche brands fell. That's all because of brand trust, right? We were all uncertain, we didn't know what was gonna happen. This was a time for us to buy things that we trusted, and we weren't gonna go out on a limb. So trust was number 3. Anybody wanna take guess number 2? What's the one thing you need to know if you're gonna buy a bottle of wine? What it tastes like, right? I gotta know what it tastes like. That's confidence that I'm gonna buy something I like. So taste, very functional, right? Very functional side of the equation. Things that you can measure, things that you can understand. So taste was number 3, or number 2. Does anybody want to guess what number 1 was? Personal relevance. Done and dusted. That first question around does brand equity matter in the wine category, personal relevance, was the number 1 category purchase driver for consumers in the red and white wine categories. Personal relevance included attributes like a brand that's relevant to me. That is one of the attributes that falls into this factor. So you can see from a consumer perspective, which we combined both implicit and explicit measures. We did a lot of rigor around this, so we're really confident in how the results came out. Personal relevance from consumers themselves was the number one thing that drove category purchase. So this automatically shifted the conversation and started to answer with new data from consumers that brand equity plays a role in our marketing strategies going forward. So we've hit one of three questions now. Now we can start talking about mixes, we can start talking about push and pull, but we no longer have to debate whether brand equity, and that conversation was a huge step in progressing it going forward. So here are the top three. But at the end of the day, we talk a lot about as an industry, transcribing or reporting out versus taking the through line to what do you go and do with it. If we had stopped there, we would have changed the conversation, but that's it. It would have just been a conversation. We would have still had brands asking, well, are our brands relevant? How do we shift our brand positioning and our brand equity to figure out how we're relevant to consumers? We would have not armed the organization of what to go do. We would have just been sitting on the proverbial horse saying, yeah, we were right, and go forward, go forth and conquer. So we took this a step further. We took all those attributes and we needed to understand how consumers valued or perceived our brands versus our competitors. That's how we start to understand, are our brands hitting category purchase drivers? Are they doing it better or worse than competitors? And how do we move and morph our brands in order to close those gaps? So Lord knows me and this industry, we love a good 2x2. So welcome 2x2, all right? So what you're seeing here, and I'm gonna share with you kind of the construct that we put up. What you're seeing here, and I should say, we partnered with one of our favorite and one of our most strategic partners at Ipsos. Everybody has worked at, for, or with Ipsos at some point in time, so you all know who I'm talking about. But this team was really great. They were a really great thought partner. I'm going to give them a quick plug here on the stage. I'll get in trouble for it, I'm sure, but they were really great partners here. Your y-axis is your category purchase drivers, top to bottom, best to worst. Your x-axis is how consumers perceive our brands on each of those attributes, organized into three sections. On the left, you're lagging the category, the center, you're equal, and on the right, you're leading the category on those things. Now, most people would think, well, this is great. You're going to have a brand by brand visual, and yes, we do have that. But this actually drove a much more strategic conversation, which you're starting to see. Consumer insights can start to drive corporate strategy. We're not just methodological executioners. Is that right? Not like the die executioners, but like executing things. We're not just methodological people. We sit here and we actually can drive corporate strategy with the tools we already have in our tool belt today. So here's how we talked about this to help prevent or push a framework going forward to evaluate our brands. There are 5 territories that in this 2x2 we started to pay attention to. The first was category antes. These are things that drive the category purchase, but that every brand is seen the same on. Taste is one of these. It's really hard to differentiate in wine on taste. There's really, like, from an average consumer, there's really only cherries, raspberries, you know, maybe some lemongrass, acid, sour notes. Like, there's not a whole lot of variation. Hard to differentiate. Category ante. But you have to hit it because that's what people need to buy the category. Your key brand strengths, things that drive the category and that your brand is seen as being better at than that category average. Conversely, driving category, but that your brand is lagging. These are things you need to shore up. Deprioritize, bottom left, don't need to talk about it. Bottom right was a huge opportunity for us. This is where we see that the individual attributes themselves are not necessarily driving category purchase, but your brand is seen as owning these things. Now, this is a lot of strategic conversation because you can either make those more important in driving the category, or you can tie them to things that drive the category today so that your brand outsized benefits from that communication. This is a huge opportunity for us to think about how we migrate our brands forward in thinking about how do we move more towards relevance for our consumers. So it produced this really cool map. These are actual data points. I've put label in there for you, sir, because I knew somebody was gonna talk about that. So you can kind of see how some of this stuff works out. How many people have done like a imagery tracker or a perception tracker, brand health tracker? Yeah, those are amazing. This is the same thing, but look how much more dynamic this is when you think about how to drive a conversation around performance marketing and brand building. In those, you oftentimes talk about an individual attribute. You talk about a percentage. It's two-dimensional. And I'm not saying that's wrong. That's wonderful. But for organizations that need more, this is three-dimensional. This is how things work together. This is how things factor together. This takes into account halo effect. If I drive taste, what does that do to my trust perception? You're able to answer that with this type of 3D and dynamic modeling. We also had a ton of flexibility. We were able to look at this by different consumer groups, occasions, emotional need states, channels shopped, categories purchased, red, white, sparkling. We were able to look at this with an incredible amount of flexibility. All right, cool, Jace. You've talked a lot about how your team did a great bang-up job and good job on doing, traditional research and presenting it in a different way. But let's get back to performance marketing and brand building and how we changed the conversation there. So first was we answered the question around whether brand equity was there. We still have two more questions to add, or two more questions to answer. One is, how do we provide visibility to our brands to end up progressing and giving them direction on how to move forward to solve that brand relevancy problem? And two, we still haven't figured out how to measure it yet, because that's the biggest difference between performance marketing and brand building, is the measurement piece. I haven't put it up here, but I'm gonna get to the measurement piece. I had to do these slides. I literally got all that stuff on the plane yesterday. So here are some of the tactical things that we changed in the conversation. First of all, we provided visibility to where our gaps were, and we were able to provide a roadmap for our brands to be able to close the gaps on categories in those attributes based on where they fell on the 2x2, and we're able to track that over time. We're able to do that 2x2 again in 17, 18, 19 months and see how much you've moved on that. That's actual physical tracking that's visually shown, that's much more dynamic and interesting than showing a percentage number that changes a couple of points. You start arguing statistical significance, like yada, 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 like it gets pretty tough at that point. Number two is we have reshaped our brand foundational tracking to be able to be better aligned with the category purchase drivers and where we want our brands to go. Number four that is not on here is we actually took, and this is the measurement piece. Now that we know all of those category purchase drivers, we took aggregates of those drivers and we put them together and factored that in, and we tested and learned a lot in this on weighting, and we came up with an aggregate measure that is one number. And that number is what we're calling the brand equity score by brand in our company. That equity score, I literally just got the results on the plane over here, so I'm really excited about it, is extremely highly correlated to market share. So what we've done is we have translated these purchase drivers that are emotional and functional at the same time into a brand equity score that has somewhere between a 6 and 12 month leading indicator time to what market share is going to happen in the marketplace. So now we've gone back to executives and we're going to say, you've got performance marketing, which is important to have, and you can brand build at the same time, but here's how you execute brand equity across our brands. Here's the strategy we need to go and close the gap, and here's how we're going to measure it. And we're going to measure it with a leading indicator that is tied directly to revenue and directly to value creation in our company. And that, at the end of the day, is exactly how we need to start talking about this conversation. It is both. But it's only both if you can figure out how to talk about them together, which the measurement piece is the key. Does that all make sense? You all experts on it now? Yep. So look, here's my hope. I didn't give you an answer of what the right mix is. I don't know what the right mix is. But I will say, as a team, what we did is we put the consumer insights function squarely in the role of solving this problem. And you guys all have the toolkits to go and do this. I'm sure you all are having these conversations in your organization because nobody's really figured it out. But we are squarely in the role to be able to influence corporate strategy, influence a different conversation, and use it through consumer-centric metrics and consumer centricity. So my hope is you've taken something away from this. Like I said, I don't have a whole lot of time for questions, 34 seconds. So please feel free to come and talk to me. I'm an open book. I will tell you all about methodology. I will tell you all about how we tackled it and all the challenges that we had. It wasn't all roses the whole entire time, so there were challenges for sure. But thank you very much for your engagement. Thank you for your time and your participation, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Nicely done, nicely done.